Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believe in a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep breathing. From the City of Angels in Los Angeles, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver, at caregiverdave.com. Also coming to you live on demand 24/7 on numerous syndicated radio and podcast networks. Actually on 26 global audio and video platforms, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo. Oh, I'm going to name them all because it takes too long. In fact, we're voted #1 podcast for caregivers of the top 50 on Player FM, #2 on FeedSpot, #2 on caringvillage.com. We have an especially exciting show planned for you today. Carlen Maddux is an experienced journalist. He wrote for the nationally recognized St. Petersburg Times, now the Tampa Bay Times, before founding in 1884. No, he's not that old. 1984. Editing and publishing for 26 years, a business magazine for the Tampa Bay, Florida region. He's also written A Path Revealed, How Hope, Love, and Joy Found Us Deep in a Maze Called Alzheimer's. Ouch. Today, Carlin is a sought-after author, speaker, and blogger, sharing the hard-won experience arising from his family's experience. But before we get started, I want to thank last week's guest, Rosie Mankus. She's a life coach, motivational speaker, author of Find Your Joy and Run With It, heartwarming memoir about overcoming her second battle with cancer and transitioning her mother into an assisted living facility. And just a reminder, you can listen or watch that interview and all our interviews on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of the other 26 global networks that I mentioned earlier, iHeart Radio, iTunes, YouTube, etc. All right, enough of that. Carlin, welcome to the Caregiver Dave Show. We're so excited to have you on.
Thank you very much, Dave. It's good to be here.
Finally. And I always like to ask my guests just who is Carlen Maddux and why was he placed on this earth?
Well, I was placed on this earth. Well, for a lot of reasons, I think, but most recently, just back in 1997, my wife and I had been married for 25 years. She was 50 years old, and I was 52, and she was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's.
At 50 years old? Oh, my God.
At age 50. And Martha had always been very energetic and had been on the St. Petersburg City Council back in the mid-1980s. And
tragic.
When we got the diagnosis about Alzheimer's, I hadn't even heard of it, or if I did, it hadn't registered in my mind, whatever it was.
What year was that?
1997.
That was the year of my wife's stroke. Wow.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, for Alzheimer's research and whatever else, I call that the dark ages, Dave.
Yeah.
But anyway, Martha was diagnosed then, and we just, when we heard this, our world was not turned upside down. It just imploded before us.
Wow.
And we got the word, we went home and had a good cry. And Martha was still able, at that point, still able to talk. She had been just not remembering names and dates and appointments and whatever else.
Is that why you went to the doctor?
Yes, that and the year before that, Martha was running for an open seat in the Florida State Legislature, and she was talking to the most important group in that campaign called the Tampa Bay Club, and along with 3 other candidates. And I'd seen Martha in these situations, and she'd handled them always just great. And when she was there, she had to ask for every question to be repeated, and and her answers were askew by 10 degrees. We got home and I asked her what was going on, and she thought everything was just fine. And so we just had to, we tried to get her to a doctor then, but it took us a full year to get her in to see a doctor. And so, yeah, that's why I wrote my book. That's what the story coming out of my book. And as well as just, we went through this for 17 years, Dave. And you've been at it longer than I had at this point. Martha died in 2014.
Wow.
And but there was, anybody who's aware of Alzheimer's just knows the volatility that's involved with the person who has the disease, as well as the family and the caregivers who are taking care of her.
Do you consider yourself an Alzheimer's expert?
No, because I consider myself more expert in terms of our experience, but I've learned enough to know that other people have different kinds of experiences with this.
Right.
And
so when you meet a couple that is going through what you went through, what are basically the things that you tell them to encourage them or prepare them? What's a typical conversation?
Well, one, I listen to them a lot without giving a lot of advice, and just sort of take a reading on where they are. I just had a friend at church recently approached me, and I did not know his wife had Alzheimer's, and shared my book with him, which he found to be pretty significant for him.
Is your book good for the caregiver or for the patient?
More for the caregiver.
Okay.
And it's not a caregiver's guidebook. We'll get into that. We can get into that. But in terms of your question, when I was talking with him, I let him talk, this friend, and just asking him some questions. And I said, well, what are you doing to take care of yourself? What are you doing as far as relating to the issues that you've that come up? What kind of issues are coming up with your wife and you? And he's in his early 80s, and this is pretty and it's just come on recently, so it's a different age frame,
right?
But it's also very distressing to him, and it's distressing to anybody, no matter what the age is, really.
Sure. When do you decide if you're capable of handling? I mean, at that age, my gosh, and when you should decide to put your loved one in a facility where they're more capable and are equipped 24/7 to handle that?
Well, he's having somebody come in and be with his wife during the day, 3 or 4 days a week, or 3 or 4 hours a day. I think that gives him a break. He's still playing tennis, and
okay, well, that's a good sign.
That's a good sign, and still very much has his wits about him.
How old is he? Is he in his 80s?
He's early 80s. Yes.
God bless him.
And so he's choosing to go ahead and keep her at home for the time being, but he's in a facility that she can be moved into a memory care unit.
They're both there?
I'm sorry?
They're both in the facility?
Yeah, they're in assisted living.
Oh, it's assisted living. Yeah, and those are great alternatives to, going into a facility, especially if they have a wing that is equipped to handle things when they get worse. I just tell people, don't wait till the last minute. It's hard enough, think out in advance. I mean, healthy people should be going into independent and then assisted living. Or if they just want to skip the move, because moves are stressful, just go straight to assisted living.
I mean, and in our case, Martha was at home for 10 years, a decade, before we moved her into a nearby nursing home and a memory care unit there. So she was there for 6 years and 11 years at home. But I I was still working, and I had to have somebody come in and take care of Martha during the day, and then I would be with her at night.
Sure.
And on the weekends.
Okay. Well, this show is for caregivers and how caregivers can survive, and not just survive, but thrive. So you said that you learned a lesson in first grade that helped you become a better caregiver. What was that?
Well, it's an old cliche, Dave, but it's stop, look, and listen. And it's not trying to tell my wife what to do and how to do it. I just need to stop and try to listen to her as to what she was trying to tell me and what she was wanting and what she was needing. And just to observe as much as I can without trying to impose what I think is normal on our situation anymore.
Yeah. She can still speak, right?
Yes. Well, when she was diagnosed,
can't find the words.
No, when she was diagnosed, she could still speak. Uh-huh. She was still speaking. It was probably 2 to 3 years in that, 3 to 4 years in that she began to lose the ability to speak.
Was it slow, or did it happen quickly? It
was a gradual kind of thing. I mean, when she was diagnosed, Dave, she lost her confidence. She was a very confident woman, and she lost her confidence just immediately. Wow. And just became very into herself and whatever else. And a couple of years into this, our sister-in-law encouraged Martha to get into a watercolor painting class. Mm-hmm. Martha had never done that. She'd been playing tennis. She'd been into politics. She'd like to talk smack with her friends and whatever else. But she got into this watercolor painting class, and it drew Martha out like I was never expecting to see again. Wow. And her confidence just flourished. And she that continued for about 3 years at this point. I mean, the picture that I have behind me, I'm going to move to the side a little bit. I call this her self-portrait. She did this while she, after she had...
that is a beautiful Picasso you got there.
It's just amazing. Her art teacher told me, Carlin, I don't know where this coloration is coming from. and nobody did, but she just really enjoyed it, really brought her out, made her very social with the folks who were in the class and the like.
It made her very popular.
Well, yeah.
Probably the best student in the class.
Well, she was really quite good, and when she sold a piece, she was on top of the world. And it just, wow! Yeah.
How much did you sell it for?
It was probably a couple $100.
Wow!
Yeah, and so
that would boost anybody's confidence. Was it a friend or a stranger? Or
well, what it was, our sister-in-law was taking the class as well, and so she had at her house. She had an art showing of Martha's and KK's, our sister-in-law, and friends and family came in, and so, I don't know the motive why people bought, but they bought, and cool. So that was a good thing.
So what's the best advice that you received during your 17 years of doing this stuff?
As I was getting into looking at different approaches and different ways to try to work with Martha, just a friend early on told me, he said, Carlin, be gentle on yourself. I have most of my life had this tendency to be perfectionist, and I wanted things done right, done on time. You laugh and smile like you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And that was great advice to me. It took me a long time to learn that. And but either I would learn to try to keep fighting this thing, or try to sort of get in Martha's world and understand where she is. Right. And that's very helpful. A real gift that I received, Dave, was when our three children, when Martha was diagnosed, two were in college and one was still in high school. And when our two children were graduated from college and came back to the Tampa Bay area, they came to me and said, "Daddy, we want to give you a weekend a month off." And I said, "Really?" I didn't ask their motive or anything else. I took them at their word. And I spent most of those weekends at a nearby monastery where I could get out in the country and just vent and pray and read and walk. And the brothers take their cloaks off, and they're a fun bunch to be with and laugh with and whatever. And that was just, I did that for a good 4 to 5 years.
Wow. If anybody out there doesn't know what kind of gift to give a caregiver, that is the best gift I've ever heard of.
That's a wonderful gift. And I mean, it's just one of the things that in my book, Alzheimer's is not the focus of my book. It's the context. The focus is the spiritual odyssey that we wound up going through.
Yeah.
And when Martha was diagnosed, she did not want to tell a soul, but except for one man who was a retired minister, who was a good friend of hers. He had married us, baptized a couple of our kids. We called Lacey over, and he said, I would like you to go. I would suggest that you go visit a friend of mine in Kentucky at the Sisters of Loretta, a retreat director there by the name of Sister Elaine. And we decided to do that and went up there 3 weeks after her diagnosis. And just that gave us a chance to catch our breath. That gave us a chance to hear her out. And one of the things that she told us towards the end was, you might want to just check out meditation and see. And I never practiced any kind of meditation at that point. And that was really important. What we did was, I didn't do it alone. I did it with Martha, just sitting side by side with her, holding her hand. The word that we had selected to meditate with, I just quietly repeated. And it wasn't long, but it was a little while that I began to sense Martha's anxiety just come down. And my anxiety began to come down. And that made it a lot easier to work with her and her to understand me, and sort of a give and take in this whole time together.
Yeah. How about some mistakes? You made any mistakes?
Never made a mistake.
Lightning might strike.
When I started off on this, I was hoping to be able to find some cure for Alzheimer's. Martha and I both had never met a problem that we somehow could not resolve. And so I went down a lot of dead ends, a lot of rabbit holes, just looking for, and I guess it would be wasting time, but at least I found out that no need to go going there anymore. And so that was certainly one. The other would be, others would include things like wanting Martha to do something now the way I wanted her to do it. And she would start balking at that, and I couldn't understand why she was balking at that. And so it became very aggravating for us to get past that impasse. And so in general terms, yes. I mean, but no, I mean, one time I tried to get Martha while she was living at home, tried to get her into an adult daycare facility. And Martha she walked in and then she immediately walked out, says, I am not going in there. And just so there's a string of things that just had to learn as we went. And that everybody's got to learn what works and what does not work in their own situation.
Wow. That is, that is something.
Yeah.
Why Why do you think she was shy about talking to friends and family in the beginning? Because that's a very common thing. My wife had a stroke, and almost all the people who lost their speech, they became introverts and really didn't, want to come out. But my wife, on the other hand, she was like that in the beginning, but then she just decided, if I'm still here, God must have a reason for me. And she is the most outgoing, gregarious person who can't speak but can communicate non-verbally. And she'll walk up to strangers when we're out about and touch their face, and I said, she's saying that you're very beautiful. I mean, she's not shy anymore. What do you think is the difference between the two people? Because sometimes introverts can become extroverts and vice versa.
Well, Martha was, all the time I knew Martha up until this time, Martha was an extrovert, much more so than I. But I attribute it to the stigma that's associated with mental disabilities. That a lot of people have one form of dementia or another, and there's still very much a stigma. It's probably less so than there was 25 years ago. But that was the first thing. I don't know. That was the first thing in her mind, and I tried to encourage her to connect with people, and a lot of people knew something was going on, Dave. Mm-hmm. But it just, for example, to get a person to come in and be with Martha to care for her during the day, the first person or two I tried, Martha just balked at them, did not like them. Then our sister-in-law, KK, came in with a young woman and told Martha, and Martha was very close with KK, and told Martha, this is my good friend, Tricia. And so let's do some things together. And so the three of them did something together that day. And then KK came back the next week with Tricia, and let's go play and have fun. After that, Tricia was Martha's friend as well. And that transition just really helped in terms of having somebody there with Martha, because I just could not afford to leave her there alone at that stage in this case, in this situation. But the short answer is, I think it's a stigma that's attached in a lot of people's minds to a mental disability like this.
Yeah. What were the worst moments? You told me there were like 4 really, really bad moments.
Well, the diagnosis itself, the time that I had to take Martha's car keys away from her.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
that was.
Was she willing?
No, she was not willing.
She thought she had the ability to drive.
She did.
What made you think she didn't?
When I was with her and she ran through 2 stoplights and 2 stop signs, but there were no cars coming the other way. And I said, whoa.
And that didn't make sense to her, that's why? Or she
did not make sense. And
did she deny doing it?
What's that?
Remember? Couldn't remember doing it?
She said, what stoplight? What stop sign? And
those are.
It was just like I tore Martha's heart out.
Sure.
And the third was about 5 or 6 years into this. I was downstairs preparing breakfast, and Martha was upstairs, and I heard a thud. And I ran upstairs, and Martha was on the floor, curled up, her body curled up in a full seizure. Wow. And I had never seen anybody in a seizure before.
Yeah, that's scary.
And and then the fourth was having to move Martha into the nursing home, and just felt there was just a real tearing there as well. So
how did you handle that? How did you get over that? What advice would you give to someone who has to go through things like that?
Let's looking at the going back to a statement I made earlier. we had begun to practice meditation, and with the seizure, we got Martha to the emergency room. The doctor had wanted to keep Martha overnight for a couple of nights. And in the hospital, the nurses did not know what to do with Martha other than to dope her up and just keep her quiet. Had not handled someone with that kind of those issues. So then she had a second seizure about a year later. And what I did then was just gather Martha up in my arms, begin to quietly repeat our word of meditation, and then lifted her up into her bed, let her rest there for pretty much the whole day. The next morning, she woke up bright and as full as she'd ever been, rather than being just knocked out by the medications. As far as sort of the undercurrent on all this is this meditative practice that I got into. It was just very important to me. Some people don't get into it, but it was very important to me. And I would go into the nursing home and could find Martha curled up, just full of anxiety, either in her bed or in the chair. She was not walking at that point and not taking care of herself.
Yeah.
And I would slip my hand into hers and just quietly say our word, and her body began to unfurl. And she either fell asleep or just stayed awake and either looked at me or looked out the window or the like. And there was just a peace that sort of came into the room at that time.
Wow. What's the importance of support groups? Did you use them, and did they help?
I did not use a support group. I talked to our neurologist when Martha was diagnosed. I said, "Do you know any support groups?" And at the time, the Alzheimer's group that was here was just sort of fairly new and not really developed real well at that point. And so I asked the neurologist, and he said, "Yes, I know a support group, but I would encourage you not to go there because most of the spouses or the people in that support group, their loved ones are very advanced. And I think it would depress you more than it would help you." And so I took him at his word, and I didn't go there.
Oh, advanced dementia?
What's that? With dementia, yes.
Yeah, no, I get that. We were in the hospital when my wife just had a stroke, and someone came in and said, "Hi, my name is Caroline, and I'm asking people if they want to come to the stroke support group." And it freaked me out. I says, "Oh my God, is that what my wife's going to be talking like, you know?" Mm-hmm. And now, see, my wife can't talk at all. I'd give anything to have her even talk like that. But at the time, that was too much information, you know? So I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So we only have a minute or so left. Is there anything that you would like to say in that minute that we didn't talk about yet? We talk about your book.
One, just reiterate that it is a cliche, and you know it's a cliche coming out of your experience. It is very important, though, to learn to take care of yourself while you're taking care of your loved one. And however you figure out to do that, you need to do it. Just the last thing, just share with you that my book, A Path Revealed, can be found on Amazon. And my name is spelled Carlen Maddux. And I also have a blog under www.carlenmaddux.com that I've been sharing other people's stories as well as mine since 2015. I've had to take a recess here for this last year. I've had some personal health issues I've been dealing with, but I've got a full archive of posts on there that might be beneficial to folks if they would like to check that out.
Good. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. It was a great interview. And just a reminder that all our live shows become recorded podcasts and video casts on all our platforms that I mentioned earlier, like YouTube, Blog Talk Radio, Podbean, and many more. Don't forget to check out my membership website, caregiverdave.com. It's a free membership support community, lots of tools, resources, and free gifts. And please click the like button below on whatever platform you're watching or listening to. By following us, it improves Google's search engine algorithms, and that's always a good thing to help other caregivers. So again, all my listeners out there all over the world, thank you so much for tuning in each and every week and making us #1 caregiver podcast on the internet. We post 2 interviews each and every week, very, very early Wednesday mornings. Look for us on your favorite platform, including Facebook or on caregiverdave.com. So until next week, same time, same channel. God bless you. Bye-bye. Anytime we suffer loss, we grieve. And a lot of people don't realize what even the grief process is. But it could be 5 to 7 steps ranging from denial, I don't believe this is happening, anger, oh my gosh, I'm so upset this is happening, to a form of bargaining, how can I get out of this, to depression, which is a very serious thing because that often leads to suicide. And then finally, after you realize you have no more control over your situation and you're totally okay with the new normal that it brings, that wonderful, wonderful place called acceptance.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing.